Hello and welcome on the Barricades. This is a podcast produced by Eastern European journalists and academics. I'm your host, Maria Cernat, an academic based in Bucharest. And with me, as usual, the co-host of the show, the Bulgarian-born Polish journalist Bojan Stanislavski. Thank you for being here with us.
Hi.
And our special guests, we have two guests coming from Bulgaria, Arto Artinian, an academic, philosopher, and also Bojin Traikov, a sociologist, has a PhD from the University of Alberta. So we are going to discuss Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, you had an ongoing political crisis, and you had 5 rounds of parliamentary elections that finally, it seems that a coalition was formed. What is weird about this coalition is that it is between two major rivals. A couple of months ago, probably nobody would have thought that these two political parties would form a coalition. We are talking about GERB, that is led by the controversial figure of Boyko Borisov, who was involved in multiple corruption scandals over the long period that he was a prime minister in Bulgaria. And the newly formed political party, and it's actually a political party that was formed when Bulgarians were protesting against Boyko Borisov, that is called We Continue the Change. And these two political parties are pro-Western and they formed a coalition. The coalition was halted and it was put in danger by a certain Radisnev Vasilev, a Bulgarian politician, a member of We Continue the Change political party, former member, because he resigned a couple of days ago. And he made available for the public recordings where we can hear members of and the management of this political party, We Continue the Change, that is deemed to be an anti-corruption, a very progressive, very pro-European party. And Kirill Petkov and Asen Vasilev are discussing very interesting things, like having the heads of the security services in Bulgaria vetoed by the embassy. And we discussed in the first part of the show with our guests this very, very weird development where you have people that, according to the Bulgarian law and according to common sense, should be investigated for treason because you don't have the heads of the security services vetoed by foreign embassies, and they are forming the government. We are going now to discuss in the second half another interesting character, another interesting aspect that was revealed once the recordings were made public, and that is Ursula von der Leyen. Apparently, Ursula von der Leyen told Kirill Petkov that he could join Schengen. We know that Bulgaria and Romania were kept as the poor relatives at the door of Schengen, so to speak, in the sense that not Bulgaria or Romania were granted the right to enter this place where you can travel between countries without showing the passport. I'm saying this for the viewers that are watching from Canada or US. And it will be a victory, a political victory for the ones that managed to get our countries into this space. And apparently Ursula von der Leyen made very interesting comments. Now, I was not able, I'm not know Bulgarian, I don't understand it. So I don't understand what was actually the conversation. So this is why I would like Arto to explain for the viewers what was the role of Ursula von der Leyen in this discussion that was made available for the public. And what are the implications? And I will go now to Arto and ask him to comment on that.
Well, in summary, basically, in the recording, Kirill Petkov, who's the co-leader of the Continuing the Change party, says that basically he says, oh, I just went and I talked to, by the way, Ursula von der Leyen. And I said, listen, if we do this, former
Ursula, because they want to pretend they're buddies somehow. Like
yes,
use
like
first
Ursula, like
names
on
only.
first name basis. You know, if can you help us sort of get into Schengen and then just the whole Euro thing, kind of like under the table, so to speak. And she says, yeah, but there are a lot of rules. But essentially, she says, yeah, we can basically work it out, which is very interesting because first, it just shows you the cynicism of these losers. It shows you how all this talk about, oh, the European bureaucracy is rule based. It's rule based. It's beyond human passions and corruption of the poor Eastern European primitive races, because all that behavior is associated with the Greeks, with the Poles, with the Bulgarians, the Romanians. This is rule based, the European Union. You meet the standards and you come in. It's not like that. This is proof. It's not like that. It's political, which of course it always is. So basically, it showed that Bulgaria's ascension into Schengen or the Euro or whatever is simply a political tool of leverage. And if that is seen as a worthy political goal by the Bulgarian political classes who transmit that through the media to the voter, to the ordinary citizens, then the political party that can make that happen is going to be the good party and the progressive party, right? That's the image. But what is the truth? The truth is that can happen through undemocratic, anti-democratic, private, informal conversations circumventing the entire formal political structures of the European Union. So at the very basic, it shows, to me at least, the true face of this confederation, the European Union, which is nothing but a colonial relationship. It's a colonial relationship where a representative of the powerful, because Ursula von der Leyen, she doesn't have the intellectual capabilities or the political capabilities or experience to make those decisions. She's just a figurehead. That the powerful powers that be in the European Union can bend the rules whenever necessary. And all of a sudden, Bulgaria's ascension to the Eurozone could happen just like this, irrespective of its inflation rate, its government budget's deficit percentage, and all these rules that were so German and so orderly. It's all a lie. That's what this off the cuff, informal kind of talk about. What Kirill Petkov told his friend Ursula on first name basis. Think about these people. First of all, they talk to each other. They refer to each other as if they're friends. There's no gravity of the statesman. Referring to another. So that's what I got out of it. It just shows the shallowness of this political structure. It's fakeness. Relative to the public image.
Well, I want to go now to Bozin, and you're a sociologist. Please tell me more about the reactions in Bulgaria. Prior to us starting the recordings, you said that there was a person that really took it up and tried to analyze what does it mean for the Bulgarian society to have this type of relationship with Europe. I mean, the facade of having the rules and having rule-based democracy and cooperation and all of that, and then the informal talks where you just discuss with the boss and he tells you what strings to pull to solve your problems. We can't hear you. You have to unmute. Okay, now we can hear you.
It is interesting that the previous prime minister, the infamous Boyko Borisov, used to say, "I'm going to do what I'm ordered by the bosses," and by that he meant the European Commission, the so-called Troika in the European Union, and of course the United States. So this kind of talk he thought is successful, and it's a kind of like he thought that he's winning some political points by doing that in terms of his vis-a-vis his electorate. And I guess he was right in that sense, because interestingly enough, there's still core electorate for Boyko Borisov and his party, and of course it's a symbiosis. Like Boyko Borisov and his party are one and the same. I don't really consider them kind of like a separate entity where some people from the party would disagree with what Boyko Borisov is saying. So it's a kind of a like a pyramid where Boyko is speaking to the bosses, and then he's the boss, and then the rest of it is the party is basically under his control, and so on. But in terms of reactions, like in terms of the reactions of the public and the society in society in general, they would vary, but for the most part the anger and discontent is quite prevalent, and especially when we consider common Bulgarians' reaction towards this euro acceptance problem, like the problem of basically getting into the Eurozone and getting into Schengen. That's not very well kind of looked at from by majority of Bulgarian people, and that's understandable, because for the most part, losers of this situation in this current economic climate, with this level of inflation, with this also with the salaries that the salaries that Bulgarians are getting, the working class would be the biggest loser. The working poor would be the biggest loser. The middle, whatever can be considered middle class here, would also be the biggest loser. So for the most part, there are not that many winners inside Bulgarian society, and so this is a problem that when we think about the fact that there is one of the major successful political mobilizations of Возрождение is an attempt for referendum along this question, it becomes clear that
but for the viewers, you should for the viewers, Возрождение, this party, tell us more about it, because I don't know if other people from outside Bulgaria know about it.
Yeah, in a nutshell, it considers itself a nationalist party, but and it has very strong anti-US and anti-EU rhetoric, but at the same time, it has this, I would call it a hybrid of various political like speaking various political ideologies and various political rhetoric. So on the one hand, it has an anti-colonial message, and speaking of Bulgarian relationship vis-a-vis the United States and the European Union as being colonized by them, and Bulgaria as being a colony or new colony, if you will. And so it has this, and the reason I think for its success recently, which it became it's the third party in Bulgaria right now, is because it has a very strong anti-war message, in the sense that it strongly is opposed to any kind of involvement of Bulgaria in this current conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and which means also sanctions against Russia. So it got this approval because for the most part Bulgarians are worried about the question of whether it will get involved further and forward into this conflict. So yeah, and so I think this is basically why Возрождение is becoming it had become has such a success, because this is a major success for them, since their previous results were way less. I mean, they had like less than 8% or something like that in the elections, and now
okay. I will go now to Boyan and ask about this pattern that we are seeing. Two former rivals that are forming a coalition, and this is so bizarre. I mean, let's ignore for the moment, for the sake of the discussion, the fact that those recordings were leaked. But what really brings together these political parties, since Continue the Change was actually formed to fight Borisov, and now they are forming a coalition with him? I mean, this is so weird and bizarre. And this also happened in Romania in the sense that you had the National Liberals portraying the Social Democrats in the worst possible colors, in the sense that the Social Democrats were worse than Satan. And then they formed after a prolonged political crisis, they formed a coalition. How come?
Well, I will reply to you with a saying that I heard. I wish I was the author of that phrase. I can't even quite remember who actually who coined it, but there is this saying in Bulgaria that in Bulgaria the only spontaneous occurrences are the abortions. Everything else is planned. So I would say that it shouldn't be really surprising to anyone who has basic fundamental knowledge of how the Bulgarian internal processes have been going on for the last couple of decades. But I will say this. You ask the question, what factor brings together two parties that hate each other in theory and actually in practice? I mean, when you come to discuss with people that are close to the parliamentary life in Bulgaria, they will tell you, for example, journalists, but not only, they will tell you that people from We Continue to Change, Kirill Petkov's party, would not even want to discuss or sit next to people who are from GERB, from Boyko Borisov's party, right? So there was this obvious history. Now, what factor brings them together? Well, the factor that has been revealed in the leaks has been identified in the leaks as the embassy. So the embassy brings them together, and the embassy is overseeing the process of forming the government in Bulgaria right now in this difficult situation from the point of view of the embassy. And I believe that it must have gone more or less like this. So the American ambassador would actually invite Kirill Petkov, Arsen Vasilev, the co-leaders of the We Continue to Change, and Boyko Borisov, or someone from the side of the Boyko Borisov's party. He would put them around one table, would, buy them coffee or something stronger, and would tell them, like, ladies and gentlemen, now look, I understand that there are some differences between you. You have like different histories, you come from different places and stuff like that. But please, figure it out, because there are serious matters here for you, okay? I've got some serious tasks for you to complete. And this is how it, of course, I have no internal information, nothing of that kind was leaked. I'm just speculating of how it might have gone. And I think it must have been something like that, whereas it was in the embassy or in a cafe or, in a park or in one of the cabinets in the office of the party. This is the process. The process is the American ambassador or someone from the American embassy pushes a button and gives them an idea as to what are they being expected to do. And in this instance, it's very dangerous, in my opinion, because this government, I don't believe it's going to last long if it actually is formed. And it seems like they are making all the efforts at any price. They do want to have that government. And if this is so, that they do want to have a government in Bulgaria amidst an architecture, parliamentary architecture, which is critical. So obviously we are talking about a prolonged crisis taking place since 2 years, right? It's been taking place or has been playing itself out. And if they are really so preoccupied with Bulgaria not having a government, and if they are pressing so hard, that means, or that's at least for me the only logical conclusion, that they want a functioning government for a short while to pass through, to accept, and to push through all the parliamentary procedures some legal acts that will involve Bulgaria directly in the war with Ukraine. And then they don't care. Then the government can fall. Then, then they don't care anymore. And I think that's the point here. That's also, the question of, the question of Ursula von der Leyen, or Ursula, as Kirill Petkov referred to her. I spoke to Ursula. Like they really want to pretend like they're buddies, and that what Arto said was very powerful, I think. But also, there's this point: what the hell? How come suddenly, after many years of rejection and putting us in the waiting room and all the rest of it, we were not able, we're not prepared to join Schengen, we're not prepared to join the Eurozone, which, by the way, I believe we are not. Okay, if we are to actually adhere to the standards that are officially in place. So why is it? Well, the answer to that, the only logical answer, since there are no other suggestions, is that they are very afraid of this referendum initiative, which has been suggested, not suggested, but actually is organized by this anti-imperialist kind of nationalistic party, Revival, Возрождение. I was mentioned here a couple of times. So Возрождение is the Bulgarian word for revival. And for all I know, now I haven't been following that for a few weeks now, but for all I know, they've referendum organized, but they have collected enough, which means that in Bulgaria there is like this: if you collect this and that amount, then you have to have a referendum. The states.
I think we lost you.
We lost.
We lost you for a few minutes. So you say that this revival party wants to organize a referendum on whether Bulgaria should get involved in the conflict in Ukraine.
No.
And they want to make...
No. I wasn't saying that. I just said that they want to organize, and they are actually organizing already, a referendum whether Bulgaria should join the Eurozone. That's what they're doing. And that's why... Yes, and that was the main slogan of their the kind of main activity, the main spin, so to say, of their election campaign, pre-election campaign, and they've gathered enough signatures not only to have the referendum organized, but also to have the results of the referendum binding, which means that in Bulgaria there is this law that if you collect this and that amount of signatures, then the state institutions are obliged to organize a referendum, but they're not necessarily obliged to take into consideration the results of that referendum. Whereas if you collect, 500,000 or 600,000, I'm sorry, I'm making up the number right now. I don't remember what the law exactly states with regards to that. But they've collected more than is needed for either of those procedures. So, like now, if they organize this referendum, then Bulgaria will simply not be able, legally speaking, to actually join the Eurozone, because the referendum results, which I presume, and that's also the presumption of most people that I've spoken to in Bulgaria, the results of the referendum would be devastating for the euro. So that's why now they want to bypass all the procedures. That's why Ursula and Kirill, they have to have their secret conversations in order to somehow fast track Bulgaria into the Eurozone, regardless of all the inflation rates and budget deficits and the actual non-existence of real economy in Bulgaria, which is the major, I would say, economic problem. So we're talking about national corruption, cheating, and everything at the expense of Bulgarians, and everything only in order to prevent the results of the only genuinely political social process that I've seen over the past couple of years in Bulgaria, which is the organization of this referendum. You can think whatever you want about this party. Like, you can agree or disagree with them. I mostly disagree with them on most aspects, but they are the only anti-imperialist party, and they are the only party that actually does something political, and it's effective. So, this is the reason. The reason is, let us...
really sad, but... Well, very interesting. So, Arto, I would like you to probably comment on that. And do you think that they will be able to fast track Bulgaria into the Eurozone, despite the attempts to actually ask the Bulgarian people if they feel they're ready to join?
I think what the leaks have shown and how fast they were able to, like Boyan said, these parties that really hate each other, to very quickly come and get along perfectly and organize a government together. which sounds like a logical contradiction. And I mean, it's a slap in the face of the people who voted for them. But I think all that shows is that, Maria, as Machiavelli would have said, in politics, or Bismarck or whatever, politics is the art of the possible. The only hard rules in politics, from the point of view of the cynical people who are in power today in our part of the world, the only thing certain is that they are going to do whatever achieves their goals. So I'm totally convinced that they can bring Bulgaria into the EU, fast track Bulgaria. They can make, socialists call themselves the opposite, and others call them, all of the categories can be overturned in politics in order to achieve the goal of the war, of the forces that are pushing for the war, and for Bulgaria to enter the war or the EU, except if there is somehow a national, mass popular resistance movement. And the only thing that could happen is through political organization, media campaigns, and activation of millions of Bulgarians' common sense beliefs about where Bulgaria should go, which in many cases the instincts are correct, of course. So I think, to answer your question, I think it's very possible that the European Union bureaucrats and the Americans can very easily achieve what they want to achieve as far as Bulgarian foreign policy is concerned. Enter into the EU, join the war in the Ukraine against the Russians. They can achieve all those things in the absence of a massive political mobilization of ordinary Bulgarians who would hit the streets in protests, media, journalists who would, shed light on the anti-democratic, anti-constitutional aspects of such moves and the deeply harmful things that are happening to Bulgaria as a society if Bulgaria enters this horrific war, or it joins the EU, and the living standards of Bulgarians.
But the Eurozone, because you are already in the EU, but the Eurozone.
The Eurozone, I mean, and then the living standards of Bulgarians, like Bojin said, would drastically be reduced even more because of the currency shift and the according raises of prices. All of these things can easily happen because the ruling elites are cynical enough and they're completely anti-democratic. I think, to me, this is what's happening. This is a completely anti-democratic political system, which is called the European Union, the European Commission. If these conversations indeed had happened between Ursula and Petkov, and there's no reason to believe that they haven't, because he's talking to a close circle of co-friends and co-party members, this shows that this is a very anti-democratic, very authoritarian political system, which is afraid of the average person, of the ordinary people. And I think that's their problem. And I think that's why they're bound to lose historically, because we're talking about a very small amount of people who are essentially making decisions that are binding for millions in closed doors, while pretending to do the opposite, which is the worst, which is the real problem.
Exactly. So, Bojin, for the last minute, do you think it's possible to see what Arto is saying, a major uprising in Bulgaria that would change the political landscape and the political arena and everything?
Well, I can't really make such a prognosis, but what I wanted to add is that things are not that bleak. We, as a matter of fact, we have not talked about anti-war protests that have been organized and now will be organized for the 6th or 7th time. So there has been anti-war protests that started that have been going on for the last maybe year, and it is interesting. The organizers of the protests are quite a diverse group. We have intellectuals there. We have like professors of social sciences. We have certain types of activists that I wouldn't I wouldn't call part of the NGO civil society. Like I would call it a form of alternative civil society, and various other groups there. The question is this enough? I don't think that protests that are being protests that are peaceful protests would be enough in this situation. I think there needs to be other forms of resistance. I think there needs to be some forms of civil disobedience, probably, in order for for the powers that be to realize that enough is enough, that there is some kind of something that hits hard, something that is going to actually make them think more about their kind of arrogance and their belief that they are above everything and above the Bulgarian, kind of the majority of Bulgarian population, because that's how they feel like right now. They're very arrogant. They're basically thinking that they are some kind of crusaders of the Euro-Atlantic values, and I don't really know if this is the ideological drive or this is a combination between both personal interest, personal profiteering, and some resemblance of new liberal ideological zeal, but we don't know that. But
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's hope that this happens and you'll have also protests. We haven't had that in Romania. So in this respect, you are more advanced than us. Thank you for your comments.
Sorry, just there is
Yes.
one coming up on 18th of June right now, which is going to be in at least 30 Bulgarian cities, organized by the very same group that has been organizing these protests. Yes. And
but
yeah,
I just want to ask for the end, Bujin and Arto, can you just tell us if you feel that there is any potential on the part of this Возрождане / revival party, because that's what they were saying for the last 72 hours. They were saying, like, if you even dare to form this government, we're going to bring out the entire nation out in the streets. We're going to block all the roads, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just grandstanding, but maybe there is something to it. Do you think they are able to actually mobilize people? I mean, obviously, probably not to the extent that they imagine or they declare, but to the extent that would be enough to actually disrupt this rotten machinery.
I'll be very brief. I hope so. They managed to mobilize people around the question of COVID and the Eurozone. That they have been quite successful in that sense. But I don't know if they will succeed in terms of the most pressing thing, which is the war. So
I hope so also. And I hope they work together with the movement for peace and neutrality that Bujin talked. I hope that, because they haven't worked together officially, so I hope they join forces in the name of peace and neutrality in Bulgaria. I also think, I hope so, I don't know, but I also think that the pro-war embassy forces in Bulgaria, which are basically the yellow paved stoners that they say in Bulgaria, the žltopovetnici, I think they're pretty small too.
Oh, yeah, they are very small. They are very small. You're absolutely right. They have huge backing. That's the only,
So I think if we talk about democratic kind of politics, street politics and protesting and civil disobedience, I think the numbers are probably on Возрождане and the Committee for Peace and Neutrality side, so, which is good.
Wow, very interesting. I told you, we don't even have discussions of something like this. And it was a protest organized, an anti-war protest, and I think 6 people turned out. And there was also a protest, and some of the students went with signs saying Russia out of Ukraine, NATO out of existence, and the organizers of the protest called the police to kick them out, calling them Russian agents. So this is the situation here. So there is hope in Bulgaria. Looks like we have something to learn from you. In terms of pro-peace mobilization, thank you so much for your comments, the discussion. I think it was very informative and interesting. To the viewers, if you like what you saw, you can support us. We have a small community. Very much for your effort. You can find us at patreon.com/thebarricade. Always forget the link. And you can also follow us in the links available in the description. Thank you so much again for watching, and see you all in the next segment of our show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.